Welcome to Building Energy. I'm your host, Jared Downey. The world of batteries is expanding, I would say, daily at a whole new level. And we at Building Energy, of course, want to not just talk about it as an industry, but how they're made, how they're tested. And we probably have about as good of a guest as you can get on the show, or company featured, I should say, Anton Paar, who is designing the instrumentation and the testing equipment. It's just amazing what they do. We're going to have Joe Zakarian on. He's a sales director, and Lars. I'm
Kurantjäger.
yes. Lars is already helping me out. I've tried to say his name, but I just butcher it. So they'll be on in a moment. Uh, First thing, we're still doing our heavy industry tour. We're going to be in Australia November 2nd to 4th, and that is for iMark. So if you want to get on that episode live at that show in Australia, just let us know. And of course, a huge thank you to Savinaw Equipment for being our travel sponsor, helping us get all over the world from South Africa to Australia, across the US and Canada. It's lots of fun. And we're adding in South America and just confirming those locations as well. Okay, Joe, Lars, welcome to the show. Great to have you both on.
Hi, Jared.
Hi,
Uh,
Jared.
Lars, I sort of was talking, and so the audience probably, how do you say your last name?
It's Lars Kurantjäger. So Kurantjäger is the last name, which is a kind of attachment of my former last name and then my wife's name after we married.
I
So it's a
see.
tough one.
It is a tough. I have to say, I've struggled a couple times in the show. That for some reason, that one, I just cannot get it out. So I'll
Fair
try.
enough.
I'll try off air so we can focus on the actual show. Um, Anton Paar, quite the company. I downloaded a PDF, and just as I read through it off your website, it was amazing. But I mean, I needed way more time than I had to go through it. So I think, Lars, can you we'll kick off with you, sort of the overview of just an understanding for anybody who doesn't know who Anton Paar is.
Sure. Yeah, Anton Paar. It's been quite a journey. So Anton Paar was founded 1922 by a guy named, surprisingly, Anton Paar. And it started off as a machine shop. And then moving forward in the 60s, they kind of switched gear and they moved over to instrumentation. So they started making instruments. And one piece, let's see if that works with the camera. This was the core of the first density meter, which still is produced up to this date. And
Mm.
what density meters are for Anton Paar, this is what the iPhone is for Apple. So this is what everyone knows Anton Paar for. So currently we have more than 15 product lines and we expanded quite a bit. So I stated instrumentation started in the 60s. Then we added more instruments. We integrated a number of companies, and then we started adding subsidiaries all over the world. So currently we are roughly 35 subsidiaries. This is a fair guess. I'm not sure if this is really so accurate, that number. And we're somewhere between 35 and 40, between 3,500 and 4,000 people working for Anton.
Wow, and that's globally, all over the world.
That's right. That's globally. So in Canada, our office is in Montreal. This is also where Joe is kind of close to. I am in Nova Scotia. And whereas half of the folks that we have on the payroll are within the office doing all sorts of things, the other half is out in the field. And I'm one of the guys who's in the field. Joe is in the field, I guess, occasionally as a sales manager. So this is a rough overview of where Anton Paar is sitting.
What is the so location wise, and I think in today's world now with travel and everything like that, I've actually been trying to make a point of highlighting it for companies because a company that is somewhat localized with their people there obviously now has a huge advantage over companies that were sort of reliant on more travel. So, what is sort of the setup of being? What is the localized setup? Is there technical support? What is sort of the delivery on a local level?
Yeah, I would say it's sales as well as technical. So the official title of the folks who are out in the field would be either technical sales representative, which is what I am, or it would be a field service engineer. Having that said, so in for my position, it's not really cut and dry that I do sales only, and then wherever the question, I pass it on to someone else. Actually, I do a lot of hands-on. So my clients definitely benefit from me being very close with them. So if they have a problem, certainly first I will try to figure it out first on the phone or via an email. But if I cannot, and I know this is something, it could be done on site compared to an instrument is broken, then I cannot fix instruments. But if there's something going on with the instrument on the outside, versus tubing problems or whatever, then I'm happy to go to the client and help them on site. And very many of my clients appreciate that
Well,
kind of
yeah, I mean,
service.
yeah, it's a huge thing. Like I said, it's sort of become a theme now on the show because we've realized, okay, people need to know sort of how the service is delivered nowadays. It's a primary question people have.
With more than 100 boilers in the rental fleet, Nationwide Boiler is more than a world class rental boiler company. In addition to supplying reliable rental boiler equipment, Nationwide is also a manufacturer's representative and stocking distributor, offering new and refurbished boilers for sale. An expert in the field of ultra low NOx emissions for boilers and fired equipment, and a design and build UL certified factory for custom control systems. Visit nationwideboiler.com or give them a call today at 1 800 227 1966 to learn more. Cut's fourth commitment to innovating technologies for the power industry has been the biggest driver in developing their innovative and unique offerings. Their patented easy change brush holder design, shaft grounding, and monitoring systems have been installed across the globe. Ever evolving, they recently expanded their offerings through the acquisitions of Insight CM, an online asset monitoring platform, and WSC Consulting Services. They are continuously supporting the power industry through the power of innovation. Visit cutsforth.com to learn more about their products and services. That's cutsforth.com, and you can also watch out for Cutsforth's upcoming 3-part series. E3 Lithium is a lithium resource and technology company aiming to power the growing electrical revolution. Based in Alberta, E3 Lithium's combined resources, including the Clearwater project, are being developed on the backbone of the mature and sophisticated oil and gas industry that will allow the company to accelerate its development. Visit them at e3lithium.ca to learn more.
So, Lars, just continuing on with that, can you talk a little bit about company outlook as well? I mean, 100 years. That is not an easy thing to accomplish. I'm sure there's a ton of history packed into that. I mean, it's just something. But from your perspective, then, what is sort of the secret sauce of the company surviving 100 years and definitely thriving and growing, at the scale they have?
There are a number of answers to that. One answer definitely I want to give is Anton Paar is privately owned. So we are a family business. Of course, we're more than a family business, but we are owned by the Sapnet Foundation. So that definitely has, in my eyes, a huge impact. Working for corporates who are on the stock market, they often look like more on the quarter or half yearly numbers, whereas Anton Paar clearly looks at the big picture. When we later talk about R&D, we will grind down on that a bit to see what I mean with that. I see Anton Paar on a good path as we invest a lot into R&D and adding more and more technologies. And I think we're going to see the growth continue with the sales subsidiaries that we have.
Mm-hmm.
And talking about the 100 years, I often, of course, I'm being asked, meeting a client of a new account like Anton Paar, haven't heard of you guys, so kind of, are you trustworthy? Well, we were kicking around for 100 years, so I guess we're in good shape.
Yeah. Joe, I want to pivot a little bit here to sort of the industry outlook as well, because we're going to be focusing a lot on the battery side of things today. Can you paint us a picture of the industry itself and specific to Canada, but we can look at it as a global sort of outlook as well?
Yeah, of course. Well, Canada has one of the richest endowments in the world when it comes to, say, cathode and anode materials that you need for batteries. So Canada's story in the battery market, it diverges from the rest of the world's. Like, for example, Canada has a reasonable domestic battery demand. There's also the existing vehicle production and crucially the USMCA free trade agreement. This means that batteries produced in Canada can be sold to the EV supply chain in the US. Take, for example, British Volt. This is a UK headquartered cell manufacturing startup. Well, they plan to build a 60 gigawatt hour plant in Quebec, while taking a company like Stromvolt. This is a Canadian headquartered startup. They're planning a 10 gigawatt hour plant in Ontario. So there's a high demand for lithium ion batteries. Add to this the decreasing costs of battery production with increasing research, combined with announcements south of the border. North America has plans to build over 400 gigawatt of capacity. And this is in this decade alone. However, this is still short of the 508 gigawatt hour annual demand the region is expected to have by 2030. So Canada is now on course to create a strong domestic battery supply chain.
Has there been a shift? I mean, just again, we're going to look at this from the Anton Paar perspective as well. It is, as a company, is there a renewed focus as compared to 10 years ago or even 5 years ago? Does Canada seem to have, I know from some of the episodes we've done, especially on the mining side, that there seems to be sort of a renewed support, like from Ontario, from a government level, community level, to get some of these like mining projects going, which will of course feed the materials into the market for these plants. Does the growth, has it shifted? Has it ramped up noticeably in even the last few years?
Yeah, I would believe so. I mean, if you take where Canada's position is when it comes to the battery market, we're first in the world. So Canada is is the only country in Western Hemisphere that has all critical minerals required to manufacture EV batteries. Now, Canada is expected to be ranked third in global ranking for EV battery raw materials by 2025. And add to this, Canada is ranked fourth in global ranking for lithium-ion battery supply chain. And then, I mean, I can use just a basic example. After a recent trip that I took to Norway, I had the pleasure of being on an electric ferry. And I spoke to the captain of that vessel and learned that it was a Canadian-based company that had been selected by the NES, that's the Norwegian Electric Systems, to supply these lithium-ion batteries. And it's based on energy storage systems, the ESS, for 5 new all-electric ferries for that country. So I would say with the world keeping a watchful eye on battery market, it's no wonder battery producers are turning to global instrument manufacturing companies for support, and companies such as Anton Paar.
Yeah, I'm very curious. It's funny because I actually pay attention to this, and a lot of the stuff that you're talking about, I wasn't aware of, and I'm surprised that as a country we are not aggressively promoting this, just even to ourselves, even to the like Canadian citizens, to know what we're accomplishing in this space, because it's pretty amazing. Um, can you talk a little bit about what Anton Par is actually doing, like the specifics, the instrumentation they're using, product lines, and actually break down what they're delivering to the industry?
Yes, for sure. Well, the main thing is research. I mean, Anton Par can help improve research for every step of battery production. Take cathodes and anode material manufacturing companies, take recycling companies, external labs, testing labs, even the mining companies that mine the raw materials. So lithium, cobalt, manganese, coal, graphite, many more. Anton Paar is the only instrument manufacturing company with such a vast diversity in product portfolio. And this is to support this industry and others as well. Just for the battery industry, for example, we have 70 different instruments that can be offered to battery producers. And this is instruments that fall under the disciplines of surface area pore analyses. This would be by physi and chemisorption. We also have XRD and SAX systems. We have solid and liquid density analyzers. There's rheology and viscosity that we can offer, refractometry, polarimetry. Then there's elemental analysis and synthesis. So we've got microwave digestion, extraction, microwave synthesis instrumentations. We have Raman spectroscopy. There's flashpoint as well. And the one that comes to mind would be for the battery as a whole, nano indentation, scratch, and tribology. Now, add the unemployment rate being so high, we have a whole automation and robotics division that can automate any one of these above mentioned product lines. It's this diversification of our product portfolio, this cross-selling, and also the all-in-one support, just like Lars had mentioned, that drives our customers towards our company. We're proud to support this growing industry. We're proud to support the people who drive this industry.
I wanted to get an understanding of when do you come in to the picture? Like when do you need to be talking to a customer to set? I mean, you talked about like the automation, and that's another huge theme of our show, and it's shifted. It used to be automation because efficiency and things like now what you just mentioned. Now it's a worker shortage. They need these systems automated so that their people can focus on the tasks that they need done, and bringing their expertise. So when do you need to come if it's a testing facility that's being built or something like that? When do you need to be when does the sales process happen?
Well, the sales process will happen with us reaching out to the customers first to understand what their needs would be. Oftentimes, the customers have difficulty assessing what their needs will be. And so with the training that we get at Anton Paar, we come in as consultants first, showing them the potential of these types of instruments. We show them rate of returns, for example, and how much money these companies can make, and how much we can actually improve their products, their production, and basically their time savings.
So customers aren't coming to you and say, "Hey, we've got this. Somebody's put this together. This is what we need." You have to be talking to them, and are they more giving you a result in a lot of cases that they need to accomplish, and then you're building it out for them from there?
Well, it's a little bit of everything. Oftentimes, we do have customers that reach out to us with the years of experience that they have. They know exactly what it is that they're looking for, and we can definitely help them there too. And then it's just as you mentioned, there are oftentimes cases where it's the sales reps that made the initial point of contact, and when we show them how we can support their organizations, if we can build a good proof of concept for their company, they would buy into the idea of allowing us to support their growth in this industry.
Jared,
yes.
May I add something here?
Yes, absolutely.
So I think this is where Anton Paar is really strong. So let's break this down to something that everyone can relate to, a flashlight. So we may have a client who says, "Hey, I need a flashlight." So what Anton Paar does is not, "Here's a flashlight, it's $10 or whatever." It is, "Okay, so what do you need the flashlight for?" "Well, we have this attic where we need light." "Okay, so you need light in an attic, but wouldn't an installed light be much better and also give you more light? Wouldn't that be a better fit?" Yeah, maybe you're right. Okay, so you need light for an attic. So what about the rest of the house? The rest of the house all done? Actually not. We have some needs in the bathroom as well. Okay, so let's look in the bathroom. So this is how Anton Paar operates. We do have sometimes that a client really knows what they're after and their experience, and they need this for this purpose, and we made business with them before, and here you go, and that's it. But very frequently it is that we really take the deep dive into where's your actual problem, and then we look in our toolbox and we evaluate which tool might be the best to help you with your problem. So it's very often it's not as simple as, "We need a density meter, here's the density meter, this is it."
Well, Lars, you talked about providing technical support in your role, and Joe. So I was just the training. How extensive is it for you? Is it? I mean, when you start with Anton Paar, is it like is it like a 6-month course you have to take? Just because it seems like a very technical sales based thing where you really do have to understand even how to communicate. If I walked into a place that was a potential client for you, I wouldn't even know where to start the conversation. So what's that process of getting to the point where you can communicate that with the customers? I'll leave either one of you to answer that.
Okay, then let me take it. Joey had
sure.
so much already.
Sure.
It's an excellent question. I am in my end 40s, and I can say I never worked at a company where I was trained as much as Anton Paar. So while some of the stuff that we learned in the beginning in my role certainly is just sales related, not instrumentation related, but I would say over the course of the years, now I'm 3.5 years with Anton Paar, I'd say I had somewhere between 2 to 3 months in hands-on training on instruments. We launch a new instrument and then we play with the instrument, we use it, we measure, we do troubleshooting, and we see how does it fit in for our clients, where does it help, what can it do, what can it not do. And as the variety of instruments is so large, so Joe mentioned for the battery industry, we would have about 70 instruments, and this is just the battery industry. The total number of instruments that we carry, honestly, I don't even know. I would say it's in the hundreds. Having that said, so as there's so much, we break things down by industry, meaning Joe has a group which covers one subset of instruments, and my boss, Jelena, she has her team, which I'm part of, and we have another subset of instruments.
Oh, I see.
And then even within those subsets, even there we have broke it down into two groups. One is instrumentation for the lab, so that is very similar instrument you put on a bench and you measure it. And then the other group is installed sensors, so sensors that would measure essentially the same things that you would measure with a benchtop instrument, but it's plugged into a line or a tank. And this you would have on the larger scale, for example, a refinery or a brewery, a bigger producer. And why do we do this? Well, because there's so much to learn about each of these instrumentation groups that we think it's not useful to have just one guy cover it all. You would lose a lot of the fine print.
L&H Industrial can custom engineer and build from the ground up any heavy equipment assembly or machine that you need for your operation. Their worldwide 24/7 field services network is on the job whenever you need heavy equipment troubleshooting, repairs, rebuilds, relocations, or replacements. And thanks to their specialized design and engineering and state-of-the-art manufacturing and repair services, they are a go-to international supplier for improved components and custom assemblies for heavy industrial machinery. Visit lnh.net to learn more. OptiSize is a leading-edge geophysical acquisition design and software company. OptiSize provides innovative seismic survey designs utilizing the latest field technology and optimizing for advanced processing and quantitative interpretation techniques. OptiSize's mission is to bring sustainable exploration solutions to energy development with their custom land footprint reduction technology, EcoSize. EcoSize enables operators to focus on reducing their environmental and greenhouse gas footprint while imaging all their subsurface targets and reducing costs. You can visit them at optisize.com to learn more.
So, Lars, I want to stay with you for a moment to talk a little bit about the R&D side of it, because it would seem that sort of ties into all these different instrumentation and deliverables. Can you talk a little bit about the R&D, because that must be extensive to say the least?
It is. So you might remember in the beginning you asked me, Lars, how do you see Anton Paar being set up for the next, I don't know, maybe 100 years? And I said, yes, I think we're in good shape. And one answer to this question, why that is, why I have this confidence, is R&D. So Anton Paar reinvests about 20% of its yearly budget into R&D. And what that gives us is a fleet of new instruments that we constantly hammer out and make things better, or we improve other instruments. So, for example, since I joined Anton Paar 3.5 years ago, we had a new line of density meters. So this is just for my group, new density meters, new viscometers, new distillation units, flashpoint tester, oxygen tester, and more. Well, some of those I might explain later on what that is. Just trust me, these are all instruments that are needed for certain industries. And this is just for my group. So, Joe, how much has happened for your group within the last 3.5 years?
Yeah, we've had quite a fair bit of instruments that have been added as well because of our reinvestment into R&D.
Joe, what would be a breakdown of the type of development that would come up from your side of the R&D?
Mm-hmm. Well, we've got, for example, one of the product lines would be rheology, and we can see later on maybe where this is used in the battery industry. And then we've got particle characterization, we've got surface and pore analyses. We can have microwave synthesis and digestion. And I think over the last couple of years, within every one of these product lines, we've added a number of accessories that we previously didn't have, accessories that perhaps were a specific request from a customer that we specifically designed for them. And I would say a number of different models that have been released as well.
Well, that's what I was going to ask, actually, and either one of you can answer this, is on the R&D side, because the industry is evolving and there's so much demand now, are you developing products are you having to try to stay ahead? Like that 20% is a big portion of that. You trying to get ahead of the industry to say this is what you will need, or is it reactionary to say, okay, last year we had this many requests, we had this many roadblocks for customers, and we're filling in those gaps? I'm sure it's a mixture of both. I'm just wondering, is there a primary driver in the R&D in today's world?
Lars, I would leave that to you.
I would say this would be a headquarter question. So we are not that much involved in to give you a precise answer, but it's definitely a mix of both. So on the one hand side, we see this and this demand will come up and will act proactively, and then others is that our client approach us and and then we just have to build the business case, right? Where do we see how much is the demand? So it would be both.
Yeah, I'm just imagining with all that R&D that a customer goes, okay, we need this and this, and it's almost like you've got just like a bag of tricks. You're just pulling them out, saying, yeah, well, no, we got that. Yeah, we got that too. We made that last week. Um, Joe, can you walk us through? I like to try to make these episodes sort of real world, so people can sort of see it, which is a little trickier with Anton Paar because it's such a technical deliverable. But could you walk us through even the battery material testing? I'm going to put the link that people can actually download that PDF. It's very technical paper, but can you just sort of walk us through that process? Maybe match some instrumentation up with that process, just so the audience sort of gets a feel for it.
Yeah, of course. I think what I'll do is I'll take a step back. It's important to understand here some basics about battery production process,
Yes.
and maybe where Anton Paar fits into this process. Let's take, for example, the classic case of a lithium-ion battery. So the battery production process starts with the production of the solid electrode materials. This is really the first area where Anton Paar can assist. So the powder raw material for the electrode, so say LNMC for the cathode and graphite for anode, well, this is mixed with a binder. Usually it's PVDF, as well as some conductive additives. Then a small amount of solvent is added, say NMP. Everything's then mixed in, and this forms a homogeneous slurry. This is really the next area in battery production where we can support. Now, the slurry mixture is then coated on current collectors. Usually copper foils for anodes, aluminum foils for cathodes. Well, this coating process is then followed by electrode drying. So this is an important step to eliminate dispersing liquid. And this is done mainly by convection dryers. Temperatures could range between 50 to 160 degrees. Once the drying is complete, the electrode is mechanically compacted by means of a calender. For this purpose, though, the electrode is passed through two rollers. These are running against each other and compacted at basically high line loads. So this step serves to reduce porosity of the electrode and reduce its overall volume. And so this leads to an increased energy density. So now we're getting to where Anton Paar can support in the third section. Well, after cutting and stacking these multiple layers of the electrodes and separators, everything is then packed together into a nice enclosure, right? So the electrolyte solution, usually lithium containing salts and an organic solvent, is then added. And then here is again where we can support. So this is how basic lithium ion batteries produced. Let's summarize then where for the main battery components that would require testing, okay, as well as the physical characterization tests typically done on these materials. So we mentioned the solid electrode material, right? That's the first step. Here we can support with BET surface area. There's pore size measurements. There's density, which is super important. We're talking solid density, tap density, and skeletal density. Then we've got particle size. We have adhesion tests. And then there's the microwave portion. So we got elemental analysis and chemical analysis. The second section where we mentioned is the slurries. Now, these are prepared to be coated onto the current collectors. Here, we can assist with rheological properties, viscosity, density again, and percent solid, and as well as particle size. And then there's the separator membranes. So the third section. Here, we can do through pore size analyses. We can even do mechanical properties. And the fourth section is really the electrolyte solution. So this is used in the filling of the battery cells, as I mentioned. Here you have viscosity, density, and flash point. And then one of the final sections would be the structural properties on the battery cell as a whole. Here, we can gain an understanding of the material's properties and behavior during certain processes. So laboratory and process measuring instruments from Anton Paar would allow for reliable quality control checks. So this will be for all relevant parameters, just like I mentioned, with the goal of developing an increased efficiency in energy production. This is key. So accurately measuring the components of the battery storage, this will help understand the physical characteristics of its components. Ultimately, will help improve battery research. And so the more precision, the greater the output.
I have a completely selfish question for myself here, and it's something I've actually wondered for a long time, ironically. And so I'm glad you're here, and I can probably answer this question. You go into a store, and there's a line of batteries. There's going to be the in-house brand. There's the brands that everybody knows. So when you're talking about measuring, and I will bring this out, I won't try to mirror it back to you because then I'll just butcher it. But when you're talking about that, doing the measurement and rating the material and everything like that, is there a point where it is functional and then there's a next quality, meaning that are two batteries, are two AA's the same as the other? Or what is the main difference in that development process? Where does it separate from a high quality to a low quality one?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, it would be the same question for us, right? In terms of instrumentations that we can offer for the customers, is where is high quality versus low quality? I mean, you're looking at precision, you're looking at reliability, you're looking at what it can actually deliver. Does it meet your needs and expectations? With the types of instruments that we have, the designs that we have, the build, and as well, just like Lars had mentioned about the amount of money that is regenerated into research to continuously ensure that our instruments are improved and meet our customer specifications. I mean, this is why our customers will come to us in terms of instruments. I imagine the same thing would be for the batteries. We do get some customers that tell us that we do have an underperforming battery. How can we better this product? And so this is where we come in, breaking down the different sections that we have for them, the different types of tests that I just offered in terms of information per section. And then here's where we show them how we can improve every one of these steps when it comes to battery testing.
It's a very interesting thing because it's not like well, I guess it's like electrical too. There's one type of electrical that will, you can plug it in, you can get something to come on. We have light systems in here, but then we've unpacked the professional ones we've had, which are like built properly, all the wires are colored right, and then we bought, when we started out, we had our budget ones, and we had an electrician open them up, and they were just terrible. They were just wired wrong. Everything was wrong, so this is the same thing though with a battery. When you're doing these measurements, it is there are different grades of quality that are actually going into the material, even though the voltage and the size of the battery might be the same, because there can be a difference.
Yeah. If you want, I can give you a breakdown on the different sections and why some of these tests are important.
Sure. Yeah.
For example, in the first stage of battery testing, this is really the solid electrode materials. In this case, we have BET surface area. This was one of the first tests that we mentioned. This is probably the most critical property of battery electrode materials. So the surface area of the electrode material directly influences the charge transfer between active materials and electrolyte. So the surface area should be optimized, not only in terms of electrical performance, but also to minimize adverse chemical reactions. Now we're talking performance, but we're not talking about any of the adverse side effects. So the information obtained with this type of test, this is critical for the developers and manufacturers for batteries. It has a direct effect on battery performance, quality, consistency, and of course, the end product.
Yeah.
And if we take like the next test, which is density, this is another parameter for solid electrode material testing. And here we're talking solid density. There's top density and skeletal density. Well, Anton Paar is one of the only manufacturers that can offer all three different types of testings when it comes for density analysis in batteries. And accurate measurements of skeletal density, for example. This is also known as true density. Well, this is performed by gas picnometry. This allows researchers to quickly assess okay, this material's property, and it screens for new materials for good battery component candidates. So even at the base, the larger the skeletal density for the electrode material, the higher the energy density of the batteries. So with Anton Par's ultra-pick gas pycnometers, the true density is determined by precisely measuring gas volumes. So this is done before and after expansion into an empty small chamber, for example.
Yeah.
And now there's also tapped density. So this is known as bulk and packing density. This is another important parameter for battery material characterization. Now this incorporates the volume of the solid phase, the volume of pores within particles, and the volume of spaces between the particles. So you can see there's so many different types of parameters that we can help with, and this is just for the first section.
Can you also send me battery recommendations so that I can buy the ones that you've measured? Because now I'm not going to trust anything on the shelf anymore. So I will say, by the way, gentlemen, you are the most in-depth, knowledgeable people that I've ever had on the show with the word sales in both your titles. So it's quite it's a lot of information, and I'm trying to make sure that I can sort of facilitate it. Lars, going on this quality side, how would I ask this question? When you're coming in and somebody, it's quality control measurement of some kind, and you're delivering that information. Not everybody, it's going back to production gear. Not everybody wants to buy $1,000 light. Some people do need just $100 light. So what is that conversation like? Because if you're talking to someone and you go, well, we can provide this, and it can tell you to get your product to the absolute highest level, are some people saying, well, no, that's not what I'm trying to get this deliverable for this price point. Like, how do you get into the weeds on that type of stuff? Because that seems like it'd be a tricky thing with especially consumer products.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, on the one hand side, of course, our job is sales. So we are measured by, how much we sell. Having that said, I want a happy customer. So, a simple case, let's say I'm a car dealer and you come to me and you want a car, right? And you will say, I need a family car and I got the Dodge Viper sitting there on the yard. Well, I will not offer you the Viper. You're a family guy, so you would need like an SUV or a sedan or something, but not that, right? Or not like a limousine. So having that said, talking to clients, I try to understand what accuracy, what kind of automation do they need, and I would give them an overview about everything that we would have that solves their problem, and then I'll make a recommendation that with your size, I would think this would be the best match. If you plan ahead and you think, next year I'll be already at this stage and grow and grow and grow, then you might better be off getting the higher priced model. But nevertheless, of course, you can always, take the highest amount of money to solve the problem, but often it will be overkill. And as I stated, I want a client who gets the right tool for the job, and then hopefully comes back with the next project once they see that the solution we provided works for them, and we'll find something else where we can help them with.
What would be a typical, if you went into what would be the longest? Let's say from day that you first talked to somebody to the day that their entire program is implemented. What would be? I mean, I'm sure they've got infrastructure that they're developing and stuff, so there's a lot of things that go into it. But I'm just, what would sort of be a long-term project where you're sort of helping them through the whole process?
Yeah. So you asked Joe before. So how long? But when do you come into the game? And clearly that depends on how long the project will go. So let's say Tesla was about to build a new battery factory. And we know they're fast, but even them, a turnkey within a month is not happening, right? So they easily built, let's say, for 1.5 years. So they could come in the planning stage. They could come to us and teach us, we would like to do this and this and this and this. Is there anything you can help us with? Then we can tell them, we can do this very well. And this, let's have a deeper technical discussion. I can't say yet, I have to understand more, and this we cannot. And then we talk about these, and it may be that it takes 1.5 years to build the factory, and of course then you start equipping it. So that means the project will go on for 2 years. Mm-hmm. Or it can be that they have a problem already, they are operating, and they find out that they have a problem with their slurries and whatnot, and then they approach and say, hey, we have this and this problem, do you have anything that can help us? And then it can be very fast. Then it
Right.
can be, we did this before, we used this, and they may wanna see it for testing. So we give them a loaner, they play with it for a week, and then they say, okay, you're not going to get it back. How much do you want for the loaner?
Right. It's yeah, I'm imagining it's quite a process. The other thing that I was wondering too is at the evolution of a project. Again, I'll go back to what I know a little bit better is production. You can go into a room with all the equipment and think it's going to be one way, and then you realize, oh, I didn't in the pictures, I didn't see the light on that window, so this is changing the whole scope. We got to now we got to move that desk, we got to set up over here, and now it's a whole thing. Is it similar? Can you go through a process and then halfway through their production facility, they realize, oh, actually, let's say Tesla, our R&D team has developed this whole new system now. This is amazing. This is how we're going to do it, and we need a whole new assessment from you. That must not be that uncommon in your business.
It is true. It does happen. I wouldn't say it's like the typical case, but it
Right.
happens frequently that we start finding a problem in their process at one point, but then think about a roof that leaks. You're in the bathroom, it drips through the ceiling, but the problem may not be right over your bathroom. It may be someplace else. Just the water goes along.
You're
So you have
causing
to
you're
find
causing
where does the problem
flashbacks.
start.
You're causing flashbacks to my rental home.
So you don't want to go to where the problem, where you can find it, but where does it origin? And yes, we do have that frequently, that we start out with something, but then we have to go way back in their process to say the
Yeah.
problem. Actually, I think if we test this parameter at that point, then down the road, this one should be addressed.
Yeah, it's such a big thing, hey, with technical stuff because, yeah, a lot of times, well, not a lot of times, but often enough, you'll see when there's a problem, and you'll see this, with software and things like that. The origin of the problem is not the problem that the customer first comes to you with, because they're identifying just sort of what they're seeing, but they're not seeing all these channels that are bringing it to that issue.
Yeah, I can give you another example where it might be easy to understand. So we are also very big in the beverage industry, in particular the breweries. So in a beer, you don't want any oxygen. Why do you not want it? If you have oxygen in the beer, the taste tips faster. So we talk about shelf stability. So it's not very shelf stable. So once you got your product packaged, you got it in your can. So okay, sorry, I showed a can. So
We'll blur
and
it out.
you may have a lot of oxygen in it. So now you only know the finished product is not great. It doesn't live up to your expectations. But where did you get the problem? You can get the problem at packaging, right? This is when it goes into the can. You can have the problem in the transfer from the tank to the packaging line. If something went sideways, you have a bad gasket. Or in the tank already, you have too much oxygen. So therefore, if you only test the final product, okay, my product is bad, but where did things go sideways?
Right.
So it's not that simple.
Yeah, it's sort of as we're wrapping up this interview, it's like I'm feeling like now I'm getting more equipped to actually ask you proper questions because I am starting to understand a little bit more about it. Gentlemen, I hope we get to have you back on the show because there's so much you do, so many different industries. We got to sort of look at the battery side. I know the offering is much beyond that, just that stream. But I just want to thank you both for coming on the show. It's like I'm getting paid to have an education, so I do appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you for watching Building Energy. Anton Paar, I mean, we really, truly just scratched the surface of what they can deliver, but it was great to have them on. Thank you for watching, everybody. Please keep following the show. Make sure to check out their links, and we will see you on the next episode of Building Energy.